Victim's family and friends wept in the courtroom as the charges were read. They later expressed gratitude.
So thankful that the investigators that have been working on this for almost 2 years never gave up hope, because it was very hard for us at times to keep that hope up. Yeah, the details are not going to be pretty. I'm raising her 7-year-old sister who has a lot of questions and doesn't understand, so that's difficult. Brittney was very happy, joyful. She loved her family. She has 4 younger sisters. She loved her friends. She spent as much time with them as she could. She was a wonderful person whose life was cut short, and it's not fair. It's just not fair.
Look at this picture. It's a moment frozen in time. 2 best friends, Brittney and Cheyenne, smiling for a selfie at 7:30 p.m. They look inseparable, vibrant, and full of life. But look closer at what Cheyenne is wearing around her waist. It's a simple, black woven belt. 4 hours later, Brittney Gargol would be found lifeless on a deserted dirt road, and that very same belt would be discovered lying in the weeds next to her cold body. This isn't just a story about a friendship gone wrong. It is a digital autopsy of a betrayal so calculated it took police 2 years to peel back the layers of a Facebook profile and find a killer hiding in plain sight. Welcome to Cold Trail Crimes. I'm your host, and today we are diving deep into one of the most chilling cases in Canadian history, the investigation into the death of Brittney Gargol. We'll examine the forensic trail, the social media breadcrumbs, and the haunting reality of a murder solved by a single photograph. Before we begin the descent into this digital nightmare, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. You don't want to miss our deep dives into the shadows of the human psyche. I want you to imagine the biting chill of a Saskatchewan spring night. It's March 25th, 2015. On the outskirts of Saskatoon, near the landfill, the city lights are nothing more than a faint glow on the horizon. A man is driving down Valley Road, his headlights cutting through the darkness when they catch something out of place. It's not a discarded bag or a fallen branch. It's a person. He pulls over, the gravel crunching beneath his tires. There, lying in the dirt of Cedar Villa Estates Road, is 18-year-old Brittney Gargol. She is lying on her back, motionless. She has no shoes on her feet, no purse by her side, and no pulse in her neck. The silence of the prairie is deafening. When the first responders arrive, they find a scene that is hauntingly clean, almost no signs of a struggle, no obvious motive, except for one glaring piece of evidence. Tucked in the weeds just inches from her body is a black, woven, multicolored belt. By sunrise, the news ripples through the community. Brittney was a hard worker at a local hotel, a girl with a massive heart who was supposedly out for a girls' night. As the police begin to canvass her inner circle, they find her best friend, Cheyenne Antoine. Cheyenne is a wreck. She tells investigators a story of a wild night, of bar hopping, and of a mysterious man Brittney met, a man who drove a white car and took her away into the night. It's a story that sounds plausible until you look at the digital footprint left behind. While Brittney lay in the morgue, Cheyenne was active on Facebook. She posted on Brittney's wall, "Where are you? Haven't heard from you. Hope you made it home safe." It was the perfect image of a grieving, worried friend. But detectives were starting to realize that in the age of the smartphone, the camera doesn't just capture memories, it captures evidence. And that selfie they took earlier that night, it was about to become the most important document in the entire case. The investigation into the death of Brittney Gargol didn't start in a sterile lab. It started in the dust of a turnaround near the Saskatoon landfill. When lead investigators arrived at Cedar Villa Estates Road, they were met with a scene that felt fundamentally wrong. Brittney was found lying on her back, her body positioned in a way that suggested she had been placed there rather than falling during a struggle. She was missing her shoes, a detail that often suggests a victim was killed elsewhere and transported, or that she had tried to run before being overtaken. But as the sun began to rise over the Saskatchewan plains, the forensics team focused on the most chilling piece of the puzzle, the ligature. There was no blood, no shell casings, no signs of a robbery gone wrong. Instead, there were deep, telltale marks around Brittney's neck. the unmistakable signature of strangulation. And there, lying in the tall grass just a few feet from her head, was the instrument of her death. A black woven belt. It was a common accessory, the kind you could buy at any mall, but in this desolate location, it was a screaming indictment. Detectives immediately began to reconstruct Brittney's final hours. They knew she had been with Cheyenne Antoine. When they brought Cheyenne in for questioning, the best friend painted a picture of a night filled with alcohol and poor decisions. She claimed they had gone to the Colonial Pub and Grill and then to a house party. She told police that Brittney had walked off with a sketchy man in a white car while Cheyenne went to visit her uncle. But as investigators walked the path Cheyenne described, the story began to fracture. They pulled the CCTV footage from the Colonial Pub. The girls were never there. They checked the uncle's house. He hadn't seen Cheyenne that night. The man in the white car seemed to be a ghost, a convenient fiction created to fill the void. The police were at a standstill. They had a body, they had a murder weapon, and they had a primary suspect whose alibi was paper thin. But without a witness or a confession, they were missing the how and the why. They needed something that linked Cheyenne directly to that belt at the moment of the crime. That's when a young constable decided to stop looking at the physical evidence and start looking at the digital trail the girls had left behind on social media. For 2 years, the case of Brittney Gargol sat in a state of agonizing limbo. To the public, it looked like another unsolved tragedy on the prairies. But behind the scenes, investigators were engaged in a grueling game of digital cat and mouse. Cheyenne Antoine wasn't just a suspect. She was a ghost in the machine, maintaining a facade of innocence while the evidence slowly tightened around her like the very belt found at the scene. The first major crack in the case didn't come from a witness, but from a screen. Forensic investigators began a frame-by-frame analysis of the last selfie posted to Facebook just 6 hours before Brittney's body was discovered. In the photo, both girls are dressed for a night out, pouting at the camera in a bathroom mirror. But when detectives zoomed in on Cheyenne's waist, the room went silent. Wrapped around Cheyenne's jeans was a black, woven belt with a distinct buckle and pattern. It was an exact match to the one found lying in the dirt next to Brittney's lifeless body. This wasn't just a coincidence. It was a physical link between the suspect and the murder weapon that Cheyenne couldn't explain away. Yet a photo isn't a conviction. The police needed more. They began a massive digital dragnet, pulling GPS data from cell towers and analyzing Facebook metadata. They discovered that while Cheyenne was posting messages of concern on Brittney's wall the morning after the murder, she was doing so from locations that contradicted her initial statement. Every check-in she made was a lie. The man in the white car she described, a fabrication. The house party they attended, no one at the address had ever seen them. Despite this, the Saskatoon Police Service faced a wall of silence. Cheyenne had gone back to her life, seemingly moving on, while Brittney's family was trapped in a cycle of grief and unanswered questions. For 730 days, investigators waited for one thing: a crack in the social circle. They knew that in a case fueled by friendship and fueled by a spur-of-the-moment act of violence, someone, somewhere, knew the truth. They were waiting for the moment the weight of the secret became too heavy for Cheyenne to carry alone. The silence finally broke in 2017. For 2 years, the investigation had been a cold war of digital data, but it was a human voice that finally ended it. A close friend of Cheyenne's, burdened by a secret that had become a rot, walked into the police station and changed everything. She told detectives that on the night of March 25th, Cheyenne hadn't been visiting her uncle or running from a man in a white car. Instead, she had shown up at this friend's door, breathless, intoxicated, and unraveling. Between frantic sobs, Cheyenne had admitted to the unthinkable. She and Brittney had gotten into a screaming match near the landfill. It started over a trivial disagreement, fueled by a dangerous cocktail of alcohol and marijuana, but it escalated into a physical confrontation that neither could take back. The witness described how Cheyenne claimed to have hit Brittney and then used her own belt to choke her out. In Cheyenne's twisted logic that night, she believed she had just knocked her friend unconscious. It wasn't until the next morning, when the news broke that a body had been found, that the finality of her actions set in. This witness testimony was the missing piece of the puzzle. It gave the belt found at the scene a narrative. It turned a piece of clothing into a smoking gun. But the confession also revealed a chilling insight into Cheyenne's behavior over the past 2 years. While the community mourned, Cheyenne had been using her trauma as a shield. She had leaned into her identity as a grieving best friend, attending vigils and posting tributes, all while knowing she was the one who had extinguished Brittney's light. The enhancement of this story lies in the psychological horror of that 2-year gap. Investigators realized that Cheyenne wasn't just lying to the police. She was gaslighting an entire city. She had successfully manipulated the narrative of her own life to include a tragedy she authored. With the witness statement in hand, the Saskatoon police moved in. On a quiet afternoon in March 2017, the girl in the selfie was finally placed in handcuffs, charged with the murder of the girl standing right next to her. The courtroom was thick with attention that only 2 years of waiting can produce. In January 2018, Cheyenne Antoine stood before a judge, but the charge wasn't the one everyone expected. In a high-stakes legal maneuver, Cheyenne pleaded guilty to manslaughter rather than second-degree murder. Her defense was built on a foundation of diminished memory. She claimed that because of the sheer volume of alcohol and drugs consumed that night, she had no memory of the actual strangulation. She remembered the argument, she remembered the belt, but she didn't remember the life leaving her friend's body. The atmosphere shifted when the court turned its focus to the Gladue report. For those unfamiliar with the Canadian legal system, a Gladue report is a specialized pre-sentencing document for Indigenous offenders. It asks the court to consider the systemic factors, colonialism, displacement, and intergenerational trauma, that may have contributed to the person standing in the dock. The details of Cheyenne's life were harrowing. She was a product of a broken foster care system, a child of parents who had been deeply scarred by the residential school system. Her upbringing was a gauntlet of physical and sexual abuse, a cycle of trauma that often manifests in sudden explosive violence. The defense argued that Cheyenne wasn't a cold-blooded killer, but a broken girl who snapped under the weight of her own history and a night of intoxication. But for Brittney's family, these systemic explanations felt like a secondary betrayal. The courtroom erupted in raw emotion during the victim impact statements. Brittney's stepmother, her voice trembling with a mix of grief and fury, looked directly at Cheyenne. She spoke of the rainbow that Brittney was to their family, and the cruelty of the concern Cheyenne had faked on Facebook for years. "You decided to wrap a belt around her throat and squeeze until you ended her life," she said. "You were her best friend. You were the one she trusted." In the end, the judge sentenced Cheyenne Antoine to 7 years in prison. Because she had already spent time in pretrial custody, her remaining time was even less. The sentence sent shockwaves through Saskatoon. To many, 7 years felt like a footnote for a life stolen. To the legal system, it was a complex balancing act between justice for a victim and the recognition of a broken system that produces broken people. The 7-year sentence was supposed to be the end of the story, but for those left in the wake of Brittney Gargol's death, the chapters kept turning in tragic directions. Cheyenne Antoine did not slip quietly into reform. By 2024 and into 2025, her name resurfaced in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Her statutory release was revoked multiple times following a string of violent carjackings and a descent back into the drug culture that fueled that fatal night in 2015. It appeared that the systemic cycle the court had hoped to break was instead spinning faster than ever. But this story isn't about Cheyenne's downward spiral. It's about the girl who never got a second chance. Brittney Gargol was more than a victim in a headline. She was a daughter, a sister, and a young woman with dreams of hospitality and travel. Her legacy isn't the dirt road where she was found, but the rainbow she left behind in the hearts of her family, a light that Cheyenne tried but failed to fully extinguish. The haunting irony of the selfie case remains a chilling warning for the digital age. We spend our lives curated behind filters, posting smiles and likes, while harboring shadows we think no one can see. Cheyenne thought she could hide behind a Facebook post and a grieving friend persona, but the digital ghost of Brittney Gargol stayed behind in that photograph, pointing a finger at the truth from beyond the grave. In the end, the camera captured everything. It captured a friendship, it captured a fashion choice, and ultimately, it captured a killer. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the shadows. The case of Brittney Gargol serves as a stark reminder that the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep you bury it. If you found this deep dive into the digital trail of justice compelling, please give this video a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe the 7-year sentence served justice for Brittney? For more cases where the trail went cold before the truth was revealed, click the video on your screen now. Don't forget to subscribe to Cold Trail Crimes and hit the bell icon so you never miss an investigation. Until next time, keep your eyes open. The truth is often hiding in plain sight,